Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Unlocking the Paradigm Portal. My name is Sarah, and it is Sunday, time for a Sunday deep dive. And let me tell you, I have had quite the week. And I feel like I say that every week. And frankly, it's because every week has been quite the week lately. So I'm going to jump right in. So, the previous week, last weekend, I was telling you about the murder board the relationship murder board, I should say, that I built over the previous few months. Actually, that was back in December, but like I did more with it over the time since then. So I talked all about that and I talked about mapping out my patterns in relationships, what I was drawn to, how I showed up. And it was really, really insightful because as I've talked about this week also, there was one common denominator, and that was me. And so that's, I think, where most people will stop is that recognition, like, oh my God, it's me. And it's like two roads diverge. Either they jump into that to figure it out, or they go, nope, I don't want to look at it. And they go back to what they're doing. Honestly, do what you're going to do. It's your life. You get to make your choices. I, however, am someone who, as soon as I see the trail, I'm on it. And after, I go after learning all these things about myself and seeing it clearly really intensely. Like I don't tiptoe. I don't want to waste time because I feel it so viscerally how time is passing. And it's such a magnificent, beautiful thing to be fully present that I don't want to tiptoe and waste time and dance around and avoid things and put on blinders. Like I don't have the time or energy for that. So when things come up, I tend to go full on head first down the rabbit hole, aggressive. So that's what I did this past week. And I realized looking back, and now for those who don't know me, I am a very scientific, logic minded human being. However, I also fall heavily into the spiritual woo woo side of things. And so I realized I had 5 days in a row where I had this kind of like my own personal shamanic, intense soul retrieval kind of thing. And I'm going to give some backstory to it. So, last August, I had a lot of shifts internally happening, and I wasn't really able to see what they were. I could feel it, but I couldn't really see it clearly. And I knew like my direction was changing, my path was changing, what I wanted was changing, who I was and how I saw myself in the world was shifting, but it was still like being stuck in a fog. And so I was sitting on the back deck at where I work. And it was beautiful. It was sunny. It was August. It was fantastic. And I started hearing in my head, have you ever had like a song just pop up? So that happened to me. It happens to me a lot, but this happened right then. And this is why, if you look back into November, I referenced one of the titles. I can't remember exactly, but it referenced Phil Collins. So I talked about it back then, but this originated back in August. I started hearing In the Air by Phil Collins. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. It has literally played on a loop periodically in my head since August. And I just was like, huh, well, that's interesting. And I mentioned it to a friend of mine, Emily, and she said, we haven't hit the drum solo yet. And if you know that song, the drum solo is like the whole build up to it, and it takes forever. So she's right. We hadn't hit the drum solo yet. And then 6 days ago, 7 days ago now, last Sunday, I'm currently, by the way, recording this on Saturday because it takes forever for this thing to upload. So I have to do it Saturday night so that it's ready for Sunday morning. Anyways, last Sunday, I ran up the road to the pharmacy. I get out of the car. I'm feeling great. I had been feeling truly, truly magnificent for a while now, but it's like picking up the pace even more. I get out to go into the pharmacy. There's a car a few spots down, windows up, music blasting so you can hear it. And guess what song it was? In the Air by Phil Collins. What are the odds of that? And my head just kind of snapped up. And I looked over at the car and I was like, and so it begins. I don't know what that means, but we'll find out. And so I get my prescriptions. I go home. I was done with work at that point. And all of a sudden, just like when I had what I referred to as my autopsy weekend, where everything just kind of purged up like Ron from Harry Potter with the spell with the slugs. Same kind of thing, but this time it was like a freight train hitting me that night. And it was this just wave of grief and purging of, I mean, I had mapped out relationship patterns, but it was like residual bits of grief and waves of this stuff just coming up and coming up. So I just sat there and I started journaling and I started like meditating on it and just letting it flow and sitting there. Unfortunately, it was a week I didn't have any kids with me and I didn't have that much work that I had to do. So it kind of landed in the perfect time where I could be in a place of quiet and solitude and stillness. And so I just let it keep coming. And it was like someone turned on a geyser and all this crap that I thought I had processed through just started coming up and coming up and coming up. It was intense. It was beautiful. It was profound. I don't think I've ever truly grieved in that way. I think the only time I have, which actually will come in a little bit later, is, and I'll give you a little foreshadowing to it. My first baby was a stillbirth when I was 6 months pregnant. His name was Roman. And it took me 16 years after I had him to finally feel and fully process the grief. And that is the only other experience that I can relate this to where it just viscerally oozes out of the bones and comes up. So I spent that whole night. I was up until 4:30 in the morning, which like I don't do that, but I couldn't stop. And it wasn't some manic thing. It wasn't aggressive. It was just gentle, beautiful releasing of everything and sitting with that mapped out relationship murder board concept and seeing how this led to that, led to that, led to that, and how every single experience built upon the previous experience to get me to the next experience where I could learn something more about myself at a much deeper level. And sometimes to see how I had overcome things, sometimes to see wounds that were still hanging out there, sometimes to really highlight patterns. It was so incredible. So I go to bed at 4:30. I have a meeting the next day. I'm shockingly am feeling amazing all day, like energized. And I come back home after the meeting and all of a sudden I'm like, and there's more. So then later that day, I start thinking, well, okay, if I'm talking about relationships all the time, it's not specific to romantic relationships. We have relationships of all kinds. And what are some very, very intense and truly transformative relationships, like the most, in my opinion? And that is our relationship with our children. I have a very firm belief that our children act as mirrors for us because everything we do, they absorb and then they do it. And if it's something you like about yourself, guess what? It's going to piss you off. So I want you to pause for a minute and think about something, anything, even the smallest thing that your kids, one of your, just pick one that if you only have one, go with that one. If you have a whole bunch, pick the one that pisses you off the most. And please don't sit here and try to act like they don't, because that's just bullshit. So think of something that that kid does that really bothers you or really upsets you or really triggers you. So do you have it? Okay. Now, I want you to think, is that something that you also do that maybe you don't like so much about yourself? Or is it something that they do that you wish you could? That's where it's coming from. That's what any trigger is. It boils down to the reflection that we're getting from somebody else. And our children literally learn how to operate in the world by us. They are either mini me's or they are mini opposites. And so I sat down with that whole thing and I was thinking about starting with Roman and what experiences, what did I go through? Because it was intense. I would not change it for anything because that experience absolutely shattered me. And, you know, when all you wanted your entire life is to be mom, and then your first go at it, you lose him. And then, like, I labored for 18 hours and had to, you know, literally deliver him and name him and funeral home and the whole shebang. And My cousin's then wife is a shaman, and so she came because I'm not religious, so I didn't want to have like a priest come in or anything. So she came and did a whole energy clearing ceremony. I have tattoos on my back for anyone who knows me or lives locally or sees me around. If you see little footprints on my back, those are Romans. And the reason that there are blue spirals is she saw his energy leaving his body in the form of blue spirals. I have a lot of tattoos, and they are specific mostly to my children because they have been my greatest teachers in this entire life. So I sat with the whole Roman experience. And it's the beautiful thing is, since speaking of somatic work, as I've talked about forever, 2 years ago was the first time I realized that I never allowed myself to slow down and feel what is coming up around the anniversary of his death and his birth, which, coincide because he died one day and was delivered the next day. Um, and so 16 years ago, I allowed myself to feel it. And we happened to have that total solar eclipse that was like the once in the lifetime. And of course, it happened literally on his birthday. And I knew it was going to be profound. And I realized something really important that day, that my body went through labor every single year at the same time that I was actively going through labor. I just stayed so busy that I didn't notice. And that was crazy. I mean, I actually took the time and I allowed myself to just feel it. And I was puking in the middle of the night, which is what was happening when I was in labor for him. I felt contractions which is exactly what was happening the whole time. And then once I hit 1:18 p.m. on the day of his birth, which is when he came out, it all subsided. And then I got waves of grief and I just sat on my kitchen floor sobbing. And I know a lot of people that, and I, not I know a lot of people, I know big, scary, dangerous feelings, if that makes sense. Most people shut them down, they run away from them. They, and I've had many people who have said to me, you just need to cheer up. You need to watch something funny. You need to just, go distract yourself. I'm not that person. I am the person that when there is something big and scary that comes up, I go headfirst into it. Like there is a fire blazing and I'm like, all right, cool. This is going to suck, but I'm going there. So I walk into it. And I actually, a few years ago, had a jewelry business that I do metal smithing. I make stones, like lapidary arts, and then I make the settings to put the stones into. So if, like, all the jewelry that I wear for the most part is stuff that I've made. And I named that business Into the Fire. And it was based on this whole concept. I walk headfirst into the scary, dark places that most people don't, especially when it's in the feelings. I didn't used to. Let me make that abundantly clear. I was a very well known runner from everything scary, because it felt big and dangerous. And it took me a lot of really painful sitting with how that impacted others, and actually having someone once tell me that when I would run away, it scared them. It made them fear that I wasn't coming back. And that, honestly, that was the moment that stopped me from running anymore, because I realized I never want this person to feel like that. And I didn't realize how much me running, I was so focused on what running did for me that I didn't notice what it was doing for the people that I really cared about. And let me tell you, I haven't run since that day. Um, so going back, I'm not scripted and I'm a little bit all over the place right now because it's been just such a really cool week. So sitting with all the kid stuff, going into the dark stuff, feeling all the feels. Um, and I processed through Roman, and then I processed through right after Roman, I was determined I needed to have a healthy baby. I needed to prove to myself that I could do this, that my body could do it. And I got pregnant very quickly, like within 4 months, with my almost 17-year-old. And he is, he's my soul baby. That kid he's Walter Matthau reincarnated in a kid. He's not even a kid. He looks like a man, but So I sat with that whole situation, that whole experience, how it felt to grow this human on the tail of tremendous fear and grief and loss, and how much that must have put into him through me. And unbelievably difficult labor and delivery. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. Um, it was it was mind-boggling. And my midwife at the time, to this day, I mean, I haven't seen her in a few years, but when I would run into her and cross paths, she would just look at me and shake her head and say, "That was the worst labor and delivery I've ever been through." And I'm like, "Yeah, me too." Um, but I got this unbelievable human being out of it who has taught me everything. So I sat with that and with him and the lessons that I have learned through raising this kid who is so wise beyond his years. And I don't know if I've said this in previous episodes, but like he sat me down when he was 4 years old and he literally said this, "Mom, we got to talk. I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but I have to tell you, I am not a traditional student and I am not a college student. And I think I need to go into the trades." And I was like, "Bro, you're four." And he had a whole logical reasoning for it. College is too expensive. It's a waste of money. It's not what he wants to do. And he was 4 years old. And this is also the kid who would walk around shaking his fist at other kids, going, "These damn kids." I mean, he literally was like the originator of "Get off my lawn." He's he's been an old man since birth. He came out of the womb with a comb over, like a legit comb over. I have a picture of my dad holding my baby when he was like a day old, and they have matching comb overs. And he still is like, I joke, but I'm not joking. He came out 60 years old, heading into retirement, and he has officially gotten out of the school system. It did not work for him. And he bought a truck and he's got a job and he works on like a groundskeeping crew. And he's walking a path that is not mine. And I had to really, that was a reckoning for me of, because I am very much a school person and I love school. I want to always be in school. I want to always be learning. That is not him. And I had to sit with, why was it so hard for me to accept that? And what was I making that mean about me? And really realize that my one job is to raise this kid to find his own path, not my path, not anybody else's path, his. That is my one job. And as soon as I realized that, I have supported him finding his path. And it's amazing to watch him grow. And it is hysterical hearing about him with his travel mug of coffee at 5:30 in the morning with these, 40, 50, 60-year-old men on this groundskeeping crew. And they're talking about their divorces and their marital issues and their kid stuff. And he's just sitting there like one of the gang. He's incredible and he is challenging and he is headstrong and he is decisive and brilliant and observational and so authentically himself. It's inspiring. Like the world needs more people like him. And he has taught me a lot about myself. I feel choked up as I'm saying that. So I sit with that one. And then I move on to baby number three, my magical, mystical, turning 14 in like 2 weeks daughter, um, who she's she's magic. I've told her that since birth. She is pure magic. She came out of the womb. She was a scheduled C-section after all. I had so much trauma with everything. And that was just like, just get her out alive and safely. That's all I care about. That's it. Um, but literally when they were doing the C-section, her head hadn't even fully cleared and they do the suction of her nose and everything. And before she was even out of me, she was screaming and passed all the tests, pinked up, did the whole thing, and was the easiest baby on the planet. Like I call her my snuggle bunny. She's going to hate that I just said that out loud and on a podcast, but I called her my snuggle bunny because from birth and I had my tubes tied right after that. So she was my final one. And she completed it. Roman shattered me, Brody pieced me back together, and Quinn filled in the cracks like if you've heard of the Japanese art form kintsugi, where they take broken pottery and then they piece it together and they have gold running through it. I actually was teaching myself how to do that with my broken stones, trying to get the right epoxy for it. Um, but that Quinn was the one who filled it all in to make me to complete who I am. And she just she was God, she was the perfect way to end my baby producing years. And as she has grown, she is so just like Brody, she is so Brody, by the way, is my son. She's so authentically, uniquely, audaciously, with zero filter or concern, not even concern, that's not the right word. She has zero fucks to give. She does struggle with the people pleasing part. She talked about that, but in her nature, she is just like, I am here. This is who I am. Unapologetic. That's the word. She is unapologetically who she is. And she is commanding. Like, she is 5'9". I'm not. Um, she got that from her dad. She's 5'9". She's got this magnetic radiance about her. And these, she has this way of looking at you that just, it automatically, without words, is like cut through the bullshit. I don't want to hear, and she will see beneath it and she will call you out like fiercely. And she speaks her mind. And we actually have had to have conversations about, I am absolutely all for transparency and truth. 100%. Anything less than that, thank you, hard pass. But I've had to talk to her about the nuances of like brutal honesty as opposed to honesty. And sometimes needing to soften the blow just a touch because it can be very biting and cutting. And she doesn't mean it that way, but that's how it comes out. So just intention. That's what intention with words. Um, so I've sat with the lessons from her because that girl, she needs to be a lawyer. Like she can find every loophole in every conversation and she will just bob and weave and jab at it. And it's intense and it's frustrating when you have, when she was like 7 and would be totally dead on right. And I'm like, damn it, she's right. Ugh. But she has held a very brutally honest mirror up to me. And it has forced me to step out of my shell, step out of playing small, and really step into who I am in the most intensely beautiful, sometimes gut wrenchingly honest and crystal clear way. And she's magic. I mean, she's genuinely and I'm hearing now in my head that every little thing she does is magic. It's her. Um, so freaking amazing. So I sit with all 3 kids and thinking of the lessons, and I really strongly encourage everyone to sit with that. And instead of just staying with the frustrations about their kids, what is that showing you about you? Because chances are they're probably mirroring something that you don't like so much about yourself or that you struggle with or that you felt shamed about or that you feel insecure about. And it's going to keep annoying you. And then you're going to keep taking it out on them without meaning to until you look at it. So just do it because it was a really beautiful moment to sit and take the time to go through each of the kids. So I work through all of that and I can see how everything played out how it needed to, how each kid shaped who I am in the most challenging, at times brutal and beautiful and artistic ways. Like they shaped me. Um, and I'm so beyond honored to be their mom and to be a presence in their life. It's just, if I keep talking about it, I'm going to get all weepy. And God, I've cried enough. So, okay, that was day 2 of all of this stuff. Well, like day 2 to 3, whatever. And then I'm sitting with all of it. I'm piecing together the patterns that I've seen in like relationships and then the patterns that I've seen with my kids. And then I go, oh my God, there's a third part to it because I'm realizing everything comes in threes. We've heard that saying before. We associate it with like death, like on Grey's Anatomy, but that's been my theme is threes. And if you look at like mythology, you've got the maiden, the mother, the crone. It's the three stages. There's also that theory about the three loves. If you've heard that, there's the first love, there's the person you have kids with, and then there's the person that you end up with at the very end of everything. Not always. Sometimes it's the same person for all three. Sometimes it's for two. Sometimes it's one, one, and one. But for me, everything always comes down to threes. And so I realized there was a third component, and that was generational trauma. And this is something we recognize, we know, we talk about it. People say things like, oh, well, we marry our mother, we marry our father, whatever it is. And we talk about, and you'll hear, I mean, I said it just earlier today. I said something and I went, oh my God, I'm my mom. And we all do those things. But have you ever stopped to actually really look at it and really break it all down? Well, I did. And what day is it? Saturday. I did this Thursday morning. This was like the completion point of this individual shamanic, I guess I would call it that, because that's just basically walking into the fire and like getting into the difficult things, which that's my jam. So I sat down and I thought about it and I was like, there's something, this is the third part. I started off on the most obvious on the surface. I got into my kid stuff that shaped me. And now I need to go and excavate. And that's what I'm calling it, excavate even deeper into my family history because there is so much there. That is our roots. That is our core. That is everything that we learned. We learned from our parents. And guess what? Everything that they learned from their parents. And things keep passing down the line until somebody stops and goes, hold up. Is this aligned with me and what I want? Or am I just replaying patterns that have played out for generations? And I encourage everyone, try this. And actually, I'm not done yet, but I'm creating a program of actually doing this work, this excavation work with people in the order that they need it of those three sections. So my final one for me was getting into family patterns. So I sat down and I started basically purging out everything I could remember about my grandparents. And I was never close to any of my grandparents. Um, None of them were like stellar grandparents. And it's it's very a little bit complicated. But so I wrote down, I started with my mom's side, everything I could remember about my maternal grandparents and the dynamics and the things that I'd heard and the things that I'd seen and the things that my mom has said. And then I started mapping out my mom. And then I started mapping out me. And I started seeing the trickle down effect from maternal grandparents to my mom, and then my mom to me. And then I could see where I started to hand that stuff down to my kids, and my kids being freaking revolutionaries and so damn solid in who they are, just went, no, thank you. Which then in turn had me recognizing it and broke the patterns. So then I did the same thing with my dad's side, paternal grandparents, everything I could remember, how like my dad and everything with that and his family dynamics, and then me. And I can see again the trickle down effect. And then I took all of that and I pieced it together. And I did actually use some AI for this. I used Claude for a whole lot of reasons. I switched to Claude after they refused to get rid of their safeguards because I respect that. Um, but I could see the points to it. I could see the patterns that came down, but I just couldn't fully see the thread matching it all. So I pulled all the patterns, I laid them all out, I inputted it into Claude. If you don't know what Claude is, it's the Anthropic AI system. And I put it all in there and I was like, these are the patterns I'm seeing in relationships with me. These are the patterns I'm seeing through that I've learned about myself through each of my children. These are the patterns that I'm seeing that pass down through the family and the impact that they had on me. What is the common thread? And before I did all of that, I went downstairs to my basement to do laundry. And so there's a rug that I had like I needed to wash and I had like folded it up, chucked it on the back stairs, and I kept stepping over it. I don't know why. I just wasn't grabbing it and taking it down. And so I go walking back up and I'm looking at this rug and I'm thinking, I got to remember to take that down. I got to step over it. I go to step over it. I still tripped on it. I almost face plant up the stairs, but I caught myself at the last minute. And I thought, hmm, that was weird. I saw it. I still tripped, but I caught myself. So I go back in, sit at my computer. I'm like, hey, Claude, all these patterns, there's something I'm missing. And I just tripped over something that was right in front of me, but I caught myself. I feel like there's something there. And Claude writes back and said, what were you thinking at the moment that you tripped and caught yourself? Not before, not after, at that moment. And I said, my thought was, I tripped over something that was right in front of me, but I caught myself. So I put all of the pattern stuff info in, and the thread that bound all of it was tied to worthiness and feeling unworthy and feeling like I have to earn my place. I have to prove myself in order and like show my worth to others in order to get recognized for it instead of just owning that there is inherent worth. It was, and that was the core. It was like if you can picture three balloons with a string that all tied together into one knotted up piece, and that knotted up piece was in my hand. And all the strings that came back to me all tied to worth. So it showed me that there is a tremendous amount of, well, there is still work to do on the unworthy core wound that kind of hangs out inside of me. And that shows up in achievement, trying to earn worth through achievement and perfectionism, and always feeling the need to be on the go and doing things. Because guess what? If I'm just hanging out and not doing something, I'm not being productive. If I'm not being productive, I'm not worth anything because I'm not showing myself in the world that there's a reason that I'm here. Like, I don't deserve to exist just because I exist. I have to prove my point and my place. Does this make sense? I hope it does. And what was wicked cool about that is when I took that little nugget of information, thank you, Claude, for giving me the thread, and looked back at the relationships that I had mapped out, there was a thread with every single one that was tied in me about worth. And whether it was staying, going, holding on, letting go, whatever it may be, tied to me about worth in every single one. And then in my children, everything that came up was tied to worth. Because, I mean, with Roman, it was feeling unworthy to have a healthy child and like punishing, feeling like I was being punished for not being worthy. And then Brody, I had to go through hell and back to get that kid and feeling like I proved my worth because I went through an absolute challenging, beyond challenging situation to get this child. Like I earned him. And then my daughter comes around and she is my reckoning of all of my worth and showing up just authentically as me, unapologetically as me, because my daughter, there's no way in hell I am passing more bullshit down to my daughter. So I had to face it. And then looking at my family patterns, and especially around the wound that was coming up with those was heavily around the body. And I am a somatic practitioner, I am a massage therapist. I went to massage school 22 years ago having a massive body dissociation, a massive touch aversion. I did not want anyone touching me, and I did not want to touch people. So, of course, applying to massage school seemed like a totally logical thing, right? No, but everything in me was like, you have to go here. And I did not realize I was drawn to a field because that's where I had my most wounding. And then I spent almost 20 years helping others with their own body issues as like a bypass to working through my own until the day came that I started working through my own. It was just incredible. And like the generational stuff, one side of the family having tremendous body shame. So I grew up hearing a lot of body shaming language, not directed at me ever. But when you hear that, when you hear a parent or a caretaker really feeling awful about themselves and it's about them, but as a kid, you internalize it. And then on the other side, the other parent being very athletic, very in shape, very focused on being strong and virile and all of that. Then you have the total opposite end of the spectrum because his worth was on being an athlete. And so I got body shame on one side, body like hyper fixation on the other side, and I'm caught in the middle trying to figure out I have to I don't know what to do, and I don't know that I can just be in my body and accept it as it is. And that was not mine, and that was never intentional. There was nothing ever that was said to me, but this is what I picked up of I don't know what is okay and how to inhabit my body and just have that be okay as it is. So craziness, right? So this was my week of like intensely mapping out all of it. I'm calling it my soul excavation, but it was really incredible to like get to see how it literally all came down to patterns around worthiness, feeling unworthy, internalized unworthiness. Worth is proven by external validation, by physical accomplishments, by academic achievements, by looking a certain way, and it just being able to map it back and going, oh, I'm not just fucked up, and I don't just have I have had a screwed up way of looking at the world. Like there's reasons that all of this came into play. And fortunately for me, nothing was overtly said, but it still is stuff that got burned into my very young mind. And fortunately for me, I've had really transformative relationships that have, I've been in a place to actually look at them that way instead of holding on and clinging to things that just didn't work out. I see the lessons in it, and I'm so filled with gratitude for those lessons and for the people that have crossed my path. And how amazing to have the most magical, mind blowing children and have the awareness to see how they like came into my life and just turned on the floodlights to everything. And that I was able to sit with all of it and hold it and look at it and learn from it and choose differently and openly choose differently and openly communicate with them about what I was experiencing, and not for them to carry it, but like, I'm having a rough time because I'm processing XYZ. This is not about you, but I want you to be aware, like, if I'm not fully present right now, this is why. Because otherwise, they would internalize if they see that my mood is wrong, and then they're going to start thinking it had something to do with them. So, this is my deep dive for today. So, this whole week, this is going to be the start of what we go into this week of what are the wounds showing you? And how is that wound? And now keep in mind, we all have many wounds, but I just did this excavation and found like the primary underneath it all. But how does this wound shape how you view your relationship with yourself, your relationship with others, your relationship to what love looks like? Because if you have an unworthiness wound, let me tell you, you start feeling heavily, you're not even realizing it, that you have to prove your worth in order to be loved. And then that will develop an I'm unlovable wound when your wounding has you picking people that either tell you that they don't love you, tell you that you're unlovable, show you that you're unlovable, and that compounds that wound, and then it just spins out of control. So we're going to get into that all this week. And I'm going to keep it going with the more, not going to, I'll see if it's going to be sledgehammery the Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning. I'm going to call it more, it's going to be like steel covered in some softness. Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning at 6 a.m., Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday at 9 p.m. are the light and the dark episodes. And those are soft and soothing. And by the way, side note, the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I decided to name that series instead of just having them constantly be videos. That series is called Be Real, Not Nice. And that is one that I've had that podcast name in my head forever. So I decided it's just going to be a subcategory of this one. And then Sunday deep dives. So this is the plan. I would really love to hear If any of you guys, if you want to share things that have triggered you in your kids, in your relationships, and by the way, same thing. If your kids, if the same thing is like where the kids trigger you and then it's showing you something in you, your relationship triggers you, it's showing you something in you, or your parents trigger you, it's showing you something in you. Be curious. That's my main messaging. Be curious because everyone that surrounds us is a teacher for us if you allow them to be. So I'm actually going to wrap it up because my not so munchkin and I are binging. I've introduced her to the Vampire Diaries. We just finished The Walking Dead, and I'm building a whole bunch of different coaching programs for couples to reconnect and to dive inward and recognize how their wounds are impacting their relationships. So I got to get to work on those. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. And I will be back bright and early Monday morning with the next episode of Be Real, Not Nice. So leave me some comments. Tell me some patterns. Tell me some wounds that are coming up, some things you've struggled with, um, questions that you have, any of that stuff. And do the whole like, share, subscribe, whatever the hell these hype things are. I mean, give me some hype points. That would be cool. Um, Definitely hit the like button because that does make a difference. And share this with people. It's on Spotify, so that would be followers, and on YouTube it's subscribers. So share it on either one. I'm gonna see how to get it on Apple Podcasts. I'm not 100% sure, and I have like a crazy long list of shit to do. So I'll get to that when I get to that. All right. Have a great day. Thank you for listening. I will be back again very, very soon.